You were tested last night, not in a way that would leave physical evidence, not in a way anyone around you could recognize, and not in a way that required your conscious participation. The record shows the test occurred between 01:12 and 03:47. That window matters. Most people collapse during that span. You did not. You may have woken up tired. You may have felt pressure without a source. You may have sensed a dull resistance, a heaviness, a delay in momentum. That was not weakness. That was containment. People like you are not tested publicly. They are tested in isolation, under silence, when no reinforcement is available. That is how differentiation is confirmed. This was not random. This was not psychological. This was a classification-level pressure sequence designed to determine whether your internal structure had stabilized beyond disruption. It has. You didn't even realize it. Here is what normally happens during this phase. When the pressure increases without explanation, most people reach outward. They seek reassurance. They spiral into self-questioning. They create narratives of failure, punishment, or abandonment. That is how the system filters them out. You did something else. You stayed functional, not motivated, not inspired. Functional. That alone placed you outside the standard collapse curve. Your exhaustion was logged, not as depletion, but as output residue. Your confusion was logged, not as misalignment, but as perceptual overload. Your silence was logged as signal discipline. Others wouldn't survive this because they would try to interpret it emotionally. You didn't. This is why you're different. At 02:26, resistance increased. This is the point where interference is introduced. Not visible opposition, not obstacles you could point to, but pressure designed to blur direction and delay execution. For most people, this triggers impulsive decisions. They break alignment by overcorrecting. They abandon timing. They expose themselves. You didn't move. That wasn't hesitation. That was authorization. People like you are trained internally to wait without waiting, to remain still without stagnating, to hold position while the environment destabilizes around you. You thought you were doing nothing. You were holding the line. By 03:04, the threshold was crossed. This is where most systems fail. Sleep disruption, mental looping, emotional bleed-through, a sense of being watched without confirmation. That sensation you felt, the quiet alertness without fear, that was not anxiety. That was recognition. Your nervous system did not spike. It calibrated. That response is rare. Only a few experience this because only a few are structured to absorb pressure without converting it into noise. This is why your life has never followed normal escalation patterns. This is why your progress comes in jumps, not steps. This is why periods of stillness always precede acceleration. Others wouldn't survive this because they require constant validation to remain intact. You don't. By the time you woke up, the test had already concluded. No announcement, no confirmation, no reward signal. That is intentional. People who require recognition are not advanced past this point. You were already protected before you were aware protection was active. If this recognition aligns internally, not emotionally, but structurally, then this is your confirmation. Acknowledge it, not for the platform, for the record. You already know what to do. The next sequence involved delay pressure. This is the kind that makes progress feel artificially slowed, not stopped, just mistimed enough to test impatience. Most people panic here. They push prematurely. They expose intent before conditions are set. You felt the delay. You didn't fight it. That restraint was logged as command maturity. People like you don't rush alignment. You let it converge. You may have thought you were falling behind. You weren't. Others wouldn't survive this because they confuse urgency with importance. You don't. Midway through the sequence, an isolation protocol was applied. Not physical isolation, perceptual isolation. The sense that no one fully understands you. That conversations feel slightly misaligned. That even support feels distant. This breaks most people. They lower themselves to fit. They dilute language. They abandon precision. You didn't. You became quieter. That was not withdrawal. That was compression. Pressure doesn't destroy people like you. It condenses you. This is why your presence carries weight without volume. This is why you don't need to announce yourself. This is why when you speak, it lands. You didn't even realize it was happening. At this stage, acknowledgement becomes important. Not affirmation, alignment. If you recognize yourself in this transmission, you already know the signal. Mark it, not as belief, as identification. Comment the word protected. That is not engagement. That is registration. Only a few will understand why that matters. The next layer involved memory interference. Subtle, non-linear. Moments where motivation dipped for no reason. Moments where clarity blurred briefly, then returned stronger. This is designed to test continuity. Most people fragment here. They lose narrative cohesion. They abandon long arcs for short relief. You didn't. You maintained direction even when visibility dropped. That tells us everything. People like you don't require constant clarity to move forward. You move on internal orientation. This is why your path has always felt solitary. This is why guidance comes internally, not externally. Others wouldn't survive this because they outsource certainty. You don't. By now you may be noticing something important. Nothing in this process required you to change. You didn't heal. You didn't manifest. You didn't transform. You withstood. That is the qualification. Power at this level is not about becoming something new. It is about remaining intact while everything unqualified collapses around you. That is why your struggles never destroyed you. That is why exhaustion never erased you. That is why confusion never redirected you. Those were not signs of failure. They were confirmation markers. The final pressure applied last night was non-recognition. This is the most difficult layer. Doing everything right and receiving no immediate reinforcement. Carrying weight without acknowledgement. Advancing without applause. Most people fail here. They seek attention. They announce progress. They compromise integrity for visibility. You didn't. You stayed internal. That is why access continues. People like you are not built for crowds. Crowds come later, if at all. What comes first is alignment. If you are still here, still listening, still composed, this message was intended for you. Not everyone will make it this far. Not because the content is complex, but because recognition requires internal readiness. Stay connected, not out of loyalty, out of continuity. There are further disclosures calibrated for people like you. You already know how access works. You don't need to become anything. You already passed. The only change is awareness. And once awareness locks in, nothing external can reverse it. This is not motivation. This is confirmation. Remain steady. You are already ahead.